But first, on Friday, Saudi Arabia unleashed its police on protesters who had been demanding reforms and an end to discrimination. Activists say around 14 demonstrators were injured after officers used tear gas and live ammunition. A number of people were also detained. Earlier this month, the Saudi government had to deploy troops to the country's oil-rich eastern province, which is mostly populated by Shia Muslims. They've been venting their anger at the Sunni royal family and at massive arrests of political activists. Silence in the opposition has also been taking place in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, where rallies were banned after more than a year of clashes. Political analyst Oman Ashabi says it's hypocritical for Gulf states to support rebellions elsewhere while suppressing dissenting voices at home.
In all the Arab countries, I believe the 22 Arab nations, there are some legitimate democratic reforms that are necessary and that are asked for by the people. There are some limitations on basic freedoms. There are there's a lack of a system of accountability. There are some basic demands in all these countries, and therefore one would expect people to come out and take to the streets and call for these reforms, and this is completely legitimate. However, when things go out of hand and violence comes in and nothing happens, as is the case in Syria, and that's what we're witnessing in Syria today, and I believe that's what we witnessed earlier in other countries, and it's very difficult and problematic to rebuild after everything has been destroyed. And the ironic thing is that some Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia support violence in Syria, and that's a clear double standard. When one calls for democratic reform in Syria and one does not apply these democratic reform back home, that's a serious concern with credibility. The whole region, all the Arab countries, as I said in the beginning, require and need a democratic reform and more freedoms, and that applies to all the Arab countries. That will require some fast movement on the part of the regimes to have an open dialogue with the opposition groups. However, you cannot have an open dialogue when you have an atmosphere of tension and killing and violence and countries sending in weapons and guns into the country where there are opposition groups.
Anger's been growing in London at the number of